Assalamu alaikum dear viewers, I am Tayyib Ali. Welcome to my channel Chess Essential. Our today's video topic is imbalance. First of all, we should know what is imbalance. Actually, imbalance in a chess game is any difference between two respective positions. It is a difference and not an advantage. It is player's responsibility to convert an imbalance into its advantage. There are many kinds of imbalances in a chess game, which include superior minor piece, pawn structure, space, material, control of file or square, lead in development, initiative. So imbalances are like these kinds of things. Let's move to our first diagram of imbalance, from where you will get better understanding of this term. This is our diagram. In this diagram you can see that the black light square bishop is undeveloped, but black don't want to develop it simply on bishop to d7 or bishop to e6, because they are not the part of a particular plan. Actually, first of all, a player has to find a particular plan and then develop the pieces around it. Never mindlessly develop and expect to find a plan at some later point in the game. So the first thing we have to do is figure out the imbalances. White has the two bishops, but at the moment the bishop on g2 is inactive. Path of g2 bishop is blocked by his own pawn, so it is inactive, and the black knight on c5 is very well placed. This knight is just as good as any bishop. White has double pawns, but they are not weak in this position. The c4 pawn gives white at control of the d5 square, while its c3 pawn control the d4 square, and thus preventing the black knight from moving to the e4. The final thing to note is that there are no open files. Only b file is open, and white can use it if white wishes. Since material is even and nobody has an edge in space or development, that ends our breakdown of the imbalance in this position. Keep in mind, we are just listening them, not judging their respective values, and we are not calculating. We are just seeing that the imbalances. Next, we have to figure out on which side of board we should play. Whether we should play on the king side, whether we should play on the center, or whether we should play on the queen side. Actually, it is black to move, so black decide to play on which side of the board. Now black has to figure out on which side of the board he has to play, whether he should play on king side, whether in the center, or whether on the queen side. So actually he should play on that side of the board where a favorable imbalance exists, or the possibility of creating one exists. So this is extremely important. Let's say black love to attack. Nothing pleased him to attack on the king side. So but there are not favorable factors to attack on king side. He can't just start attacking on the king side, because he don't gain something on the king side. The white with no weakness there, because white has no weakness there. Few black pieces aim in that direction, but they don't make much from it. So black has little hope for on that wing. So black tries to look at the center. Here we have some hope for play, because both our knights influence in this sector of the board. However, since there are no ready-made squares or weaknesses to go for, we would be forced to crack it open with a central advance. Thus a centrally based plan would revolve around the break with the d6 to d5. So we will have to push d5 at any moment. Since this type of advance would give us more central territory and potentially open lines for our rooks, it is worth pursuing. Once we find an interesting path, we go to our next step, and next step is creation of fantasy positions. A fantasy position is just that, a fantasy. We place the pieces wherever we want in order to carry out our plan. In this case, our plan is to push d6 to d5. Here we note that our knight on c5 would hang if we move the d pawn too quickly. So we must give this piece support. We also must be careful that the resultant opening of the center does not activate white's bishop. To this end, we would like to trade off, or at least challenge, a white bishop on g2. And this goes along with a rule which we will discuss later. Actually, the opponent which has two bishops is very powerful, because two bishops has the potential to cover many lines. So if the other opponent trade one of his bishops, so the game remain balanced. To fulfill these ideas, we come up with the following setup. Let's see in the diagram. This is our fantasy position. Here we arrange our pieces according to our desire and push the d6 pawn to the d5. A glance at the diagram shows that black would have good play. However, it must be admitted that the construction of this setup would take several moves. What would white be doing in the meantime? To answer this, you would go through these same stages for your opponent. As it turns out, white's correct plan is to play for kingside expansion by an f2 to f4 advance. Notice that this can be done very quickly via castle and f4. The one problem is timing. White's plan is faster than ours. If we decided that we wanted to play this way, we would then look for the candidate moves. For example, all the moves that aid us in setting up the desired position. In this case, only one move comes into consideration, namely b6. We would then analyze it, and if everything checked out, we would store it away as a playable area. We now turn our attention to the queen side. Are there any weaknesses to attack? No. However, our strong knight c5 knight is placed there, and white double pawns are also on there. So can we create a weakness over there? Yes, we can create a weakness over there. If we play b7 to the b5, then after c captures b5, c captures b5, white is left with a backward d pawn, which is on d3. So this pawn becomes the target. We can place a rook on c8 and move our bishop, so put pressure on the white's weak and accessible pawn on the c3. So it turns out that we have a choice: play in the center or on the queen side. In the game, black choose the queen side simply because it is the faster plan. Now that black is not worried about white's playing bishop x c5, since after dx c5, black could make use of the newly opened d file to attack the backward pawn on the d3. So black here plays the b5. After c captures b5, c captures b5 and castle, black play the move bishop to the b7. Actually, it is a tough choice. Black wants to put his rook on c8 as quickly as possible, but he is not sure to where to place his bishop. A very good alternative is that if black play the move a5 followed by bishop to the a6, then white must always worry about a discovered attack on his d3 pawn by b5 to the b4. So this can be playable by the black, and he felt that after he play rook to c8, he will be in good position to play d6 to d5 advance. After that, white play rook a to b1 and black play rook a2 and black play rook to the c8. Black should play queen to the d7, protecting both his b5 pawn and the bishop on d7. But black play rook to the c8. Now white get rid of his weak pawn on the c3 by playing c4. Actually here white can't capture the b5 pawn, because after capturing the b5 pawn, his d3 pawn will fall. So white avoid this thing and play the move c4. Here if black captures the pawn on the c4, then white will capture the knight on the c5, and after d captures c5, black captures the bishop on the b7, and after c captures d3, white can play queen to the c4, and here black can't capture the knight because white captures the pawn on f7 with the check, and then game over for black. Now black play the move a6, c captures b5, a captures b5. Still white rook can't capture on the b5 because of bishop to the a6. The accuracy of playing rook to c8 by black must come up with a new plan. White's pawn weakness is now on a2. So black redirect his gun on this point. So here black play rook to the a8 and white play bishop to the b4. White wins to hold on his two bishops. He does not want to lose his bishop pair. Here black play knight to the a4. Now if white's knight comes to the c3, black can trade it off, and now black is in position to play the d5. If white captures by ex d5, he would be left with a weak isolated pawn on the d3. If he leaves his pawn on the e4, then after black trades pawn by dx e4, white's e4 pawn would be vulnerable to several of the black pieces. Just another example of black striving to create pawn weakness in the enemy camp. Knight to the c3, white plays, and black captures the knight on c3, and bishop captures the knight on c3, and here black play the move d5, which is main goal. Using tactical means to create the desired target on the e4, white cannot play rook captures b5 due to the bishop a6 and d captures e4. So here white play queen to the e2 and black play rook to the a4. Still whacking away at the e4 pawn and preparing to double on the a file and intensify the pressure on the weak a pawn. White play queen to the b2 and black play queen to the a8. Black steps up the pressure on the e4 pawn and the a2 pawn. Here white play bishop captures e5 and rook captures a2, and this is a draw. The white queen wants to guard the e5 bishop, so black would have a perpetual on the queen after queen d4. After queen d4, rook a4, queen c3, rook a3, and etc. So this thinking technique is quite effective but requires a good deal of practice to master it. So you have seen that black does not play the moves mindlessly. He sees the imbalances on the chessboard and comes up with a plan to try to build up an advantage over these imbalances. But unfortunately, due to some inaccuracies, the game was drawn. But actually, the black was the one who is calling the shots and who is putting pressure in the white's camp. So hopefully you have understand the term imbalance and what are the imbalances in the chess game. You have to find them first and then you have to make a plan to build an advantage over them. So these are all about imbalances. We will meet again in our next video, which is about calculation and combination.